Greetings, Portage First United Methodist Church. This is Pastor Michael coming to you from your sanctuary here in Portage, Indiana. And I'd like to wish all of you a very happy Veterans Day. I ask you to pray for our country, for its leaders, and for all those who have made certain sacrifices to protect our freedom. If you or your loved ones have served in the military, are serving in the military currently, we honor you and your sacrifices. It's also an interesting thing that November 11th is Veterans Day, but it's also a Saint's Day. And the saint's name is Saint Martin of Tours. He's a French saint. And the story of Saint Martin is that he was a soldier who came to know Christ, and God called him to leave his work as a soldier and to become basically a priest or a monk, and to devote his life towards charitable works. And though that's not everyone's course, this was a very certain calling that God gave to Martin. And so he left his work as a soldier. And it says here, and from a book called The Life of Saint Martin by Sulpicius Severus, that is the guy's name, Sulpicius Severus wrote down the life of Saint Martin. And here's a story that kind of shows us what Saint Martin is like. One day, at the gate of the city of Amiens, Martin met a poor man who was naked. Martin's clothing was reduced to his armor and his simple military cloak. In the middle of the winter, which had been more severe than usual, and indeed many had perished from the extreme cold, those who had passed that way had been begged by the pitiable pauper to have compassion on him, but all had gone by. Martin, however, was filled with God's grace and saw that it was for him, when others had denied their mercy, that the beggar was being reserved. Yet what should he do? He had nothing except the cloak he was wearing. He had already devoted the rest of his clothing to similar purposes. Drawing the sword which he was wearing, he cut the cloak in two. One part he gave to the pauper, and the other he began to dress himself. Meanwhile, some bystanders began to laugh, for it was an inelegant figure which Martin cut, dressed in half a garment. Yet many of the saner mind sighed deeply, when they, who had more to give, might have clothed the pauper without making themselves naked. They had done nothing of the sort. When night had come, he was deep in sleep. Martin beheld the Lord Jesus Christ in a dream, clothed in that part of his own cloak with which he had covered the pauper. He was bidden to look attentively upon the Lord and to recognize the garment he had given. And soon, to a throng of angels standing about, he heard Jesus say in a clear voice, "Martin, still a baby Christian, still new to the church, has covered me with his own cloak." The Lord, in declaring that it was he who had been clothed in the person of the pauper, was truly mindful of his own words uttered long ago. "As long as you did it to one of these, the least of these, you did it unto me." Further, to strengthen the evidence of such a good deed, he deigned to show himself in the very garment that the beggar had received. Think about that story for just a moment. Saint Martin, having already given away most of his belongings, most of his own clothing, in the middle of winter comes to the gate of the city and sees a pauper, naked, wearing merely rags. And Saint Martin has nothing left. He has nothing left to give. So he takes his sword and he cuts his last remaining garment in half and gives half of it to the beggar and retains half of it for himself. Doesn't that sound like so many of our soldiers? I mean, maybe they're not cutting their clothing in half, but they cut their time with their families in half. They cut their ties to safety in half. They cut their ties to freedom of choice and decision in half. They decide that they're going to obey their superior officers. They decide they're going to obey their president, and they cut their lives in half. And every decision and choice they make becomes guided by other people's principles and other people's decisions. They lay aside their own desires, and they do what needs to be done. Martin was a soldier and a saint. And maybe a lot of us, in fact all of us, have a long way to go towards sainthood. I think we can learn a lot from Saint Martin and from the many soldiers and veterans that we know. Sometimes it's so important for us to lay aside our own desires, our own agendas. Sometimes it's more important for the good of the community, of the world, of the country, to lay aside what we need so that we can give towards what others need. Our soldiers know this. They practiced this on a day-to-day basis. They served in the military. That service word is very important. They took care of people they didn't even know. They watched over the freedoms of people they will never meet. Not only their loved ones, but people whom they will never meet, people who may not even appreciate or recognize the gift. And so on behalf of Portage First United Methodist Church, I thank you, our veterans, for the sacrifices you made, for those moments when you cut your cloak in half and covered the nation with protection. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine down upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you peace.